Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Discriminating Gamer. Say, how was the Roman Empire cut in half? With a pair of Caesars! Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at Tetrarchia from Draco Ideas. Hello, everybody. We'll get back to the review in just a second. I just want to take a moment to ask you to go ahead and check out and subscribe to my other channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about military history and books on history and fun things like that. Please check that out. Please subscribe. And now, back to the review. In Tetrarchia, from Draco Ideas, 1 to 4 players take on the role of the various emperors that ruled during the time of Diocletian in the Roman Empire as they attempt to thwart the evil barbarians. Essentially, the game board is a map of the Roman Empire in the late 3rd century AD. Now, this is the period of the Tetrarchy, of course, the rule of the four, where Diocletian, hoping to solve the constant state of civil war in the 3rd century and the barracks emperors, decided to share power with 3 other emperors. The 4 emperors together were to essentially hold the empire together, use the power and the authority of the purple to defeat the various barbarians in their respective gates. The game board consists of various spaces. You have tracks leading from one space to another. Some of them are broken, some of them have arrows. And then, of course, you have just outside of the empire 6 spaces where the barbarian armies will come from. Now you have 2 die. Essentially, you have a white region die, and then you have a standard black die. You're going to roll these die, and the region die will tell you which region, and the black die will tell you which space in that region. You're going to put a black disc. The black disc represents a revolt that is going on in that region. Now, depending on player difficulty, you may want to do some more of those. You may also want to add some enemy armies right off the bat. There's also going to be spaces for ships. Ships are going to allow the emperors to actually cross the water as a turn. You can also decide on difficulty if you want to have 3 or less of those ships available, making it easier or more difficult for the emperors to do that. Now, during the Emperor phase, the Emperor Diocletian is going to be placed first. He's the Green Emperor. You're going to place him on his capital in Asia Minor. And he is going to go ahead and he can take up to 6 points worth of actions during his turn. Now, the first thing he can do is move. Essentially, he can move along a straight line to any locations for 1 point. Or he can move from any port city to any port city if there's a ship in the sea for 1 point. Now, he can move along a broken line for 2 points, or he can move to a location that has a revolt in it for an additional point. He can secure a location. He can secure a location by putting his colored disc in that location. That's going to make that location safer, but it's also going to help him potentially in a fight to come. Now, you only have a limited number of garrison tokens you can place, and you can't remove them once they're placed. You do have the option in the beginning of the game to decide if you want to have more or less of those garrison tokens for the game. Now, you can also move to one of the border locations. Again, these are where the barbarians come from. They're outside of the borders of Rome. If you go to one of these barbarian locations, you can spend 2 of your action points to build a garrison there. That secures that border. You can also subdue a revolt. If you're in a space with a revolt, you can spend 2 action points to remove that revolt, or you can spend 1 action point to turn that black disc of revolt into a gray disc of unrest. You can also spend 1 point to remove an unrest. Now finally, an emperor can attack an adjacent army. He can attack an adjacent army by spending 1 of his actions and looking at any garrison tokens of his color that he is on or adjacent to. He can look at any other emperors that are close that can give him some bonuses. And then your enemy barbarian is going to do the same thing. He's going to look at the various revolts that he is on or near. He's going to look at any enemy army or any of his friendly armies that are close to him, and that's going to give you kind of the base totals. You're going to roll the die, and whoever has the highest total of that die roll is going to win, and the loser must be removed from the board. So after an emperor is gone, you're going to go to the barbarian phase. Now during the barbarian phase, you're going to look kind of at revolts. Essentially, if there is any revolt that is adjacent to an unrest token, that unrest token becomes a revolt. Now again, if you have kind of a string of unrest tokens that are adjacent to one revolt, they will all become revolts if they are linked. Next, you're going to roll for barbarian activity. Essentially, you're going to roll the province die and the black die, and it's going to tell you again the province and the location in that province where you're going to place an unrest token. Now, if you would place that unrest token where there you have a garrisoned unit, one of your color garrison units, then nothing happens. That area is protected. If you were going to place that unrest token in a place where there is already unrest, you turn that unrest into a revolt. If you were going to place an unrest token in a place where there's already a revolt, then you trigger an uprising. If there's an uprising, you place a revolt in every location that is directly linked to that location. Next, you're going to roll to see where an enemy army comes in. Again, you roll the province. You see which province the enemy comes in. If it is empty, if there is an unsecured border there, then they can come in. Otherwise, if it's secured or if there's an emperor or the emperor there, they can't do it. And instead, you simply roll for barbarian activity once again. Finally, you have barbarians advance. The barbarians then advance one space closer to Rome. They're following various arrows along the tracks, and they're going to follow that on a path to Rome. Now, as they're moving, they are dropping off more of the unrest tokens. So the further along they get, the more powerful they are becoming. As players go around and around, you alternate between the Emperor taking their actions and the Barbarians taking their actions, and you're going to try to stop the Barbarians from advancing too far. The game is over instantly if ever the Barbarian army enters Rome, or if ever you have to place a Black Revolt marker and there are no more Black Revolt markers to place. Conversely, if all of the Emperors can succeed in placing their garrison tokens in all 6 of the border provinces, then they win! Tetrarchia. So Tetrarchia is physically a very small game. It's a tiny box, tiny board, very small. So when I first played this game, I misread a critical rule. And the rule I misread was, I thought the way I had read it was that the barbarian phase took place after all 4 emperors had gone. And it was so easy, it wasn't even a game, it was an activity. And I was like, I'm doing something wrong. And I thought in the back of my head, no, they've got to take the barbarians after each emperor goes. So I reread it. And I came away thinking, no, I read it right. And I played about 3 or 4 games like this, trying to figure out what I was missing. I was like, this game is too easy. And so I hit that rule book and I reread the whole thing again. And then sure enough, I saw in one space it said after each emperor. And I'm like, and I felt like an idiot. Then I played it right and it worked. The game worked. Which kind of leads me to a point, and that is this is not the best written rule book. There are some kind of ambiguities in there. There's some things that don't quite work. I actually emailed the publisher to ask a few rules questions. For instance, it says something to the effect of if an enemy army enters a space with another disc, that disc becomes black. But I didn't see where it just said if wherever the army moves, the disc becomes black. Maybe it's in there and I missed it. But I emailed them and they said, no, everywhere the army goes, it becomes black. I go, okay, that makes sense. But again, I didn't get that from the rule book. And it said if one of the provinces is empty, I didn't quite understand what would happen if there was an emperor there but not their disc yet. So just a few things. It's not the best written rule book. Now, I don't think it's a horrible rule book. I've read worse. I mean, I've read really bad rule books. This is not a really bad rule book. It could have been better. It could have been better. But again, I made that mistake because it was where I didn't read about the barbarians coming after each emperor, because it just seemed like it was a very small throwaway line, and I wish that had been more prominently put out there. But anyway, so I started playing Tetrarchia right. And the thing that strikes me right off the bat is the game feels a lot like Pandemic. It's kind of a Pandemic-esque experience, right? And you can play it solo. You can play it with up to 4 players. First time I played it, when I played it wrong, I played it with somebody else, and then I played it subsequently solo. And there is that Pandemic feeling. You know, you're trying to, essentially this is a game of putting out fires. You're running here, you're trying to put out this fire while something else is going on elsewhere, and you're putting out that fire. And I gotta tell you, this is one of those games where when you roll the die to find out where the next thing's coming, it's tense. And it's chance, but it's tense. And there's that tension there. Every time you're rolling that die to find out what else is coming on the board, it's like, oh, okay, that's manageable. And then something else goes, oh crap, I gotta move quickly and forget what I'm doing here to try to do that. And because even as you have chance there, you have choice. There's a ton of choices here about which fires you're going to put out, and you got to prioritize those fires. I got to tell you something. This is a blast. This is a fun game. It's a quick game. It's a relatively light game, and once you get through the rule book, hopefully correctly, it's easy to learn and easy to play. And I really got a kick out of it. I really enjoy Tetrarchia. Again, I was going into it, I didn't know what to expect, and I was really pleasantly surprised once I figured it out. Anyway, really fun game. Really enjoyed it. If you're looking for something that's kind of a light Pandemic-esque game that has a great theme, you'll want to check this one out. And I should point out this game also does contain within it, this version does contain within it, expansions and advanced rules. I have not played with any of those. I'm just reviewing the base game here. But you do have those for a little bit of an extra challenge if that's something you're interested in as well. So with all that said, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to recommend buy it. I think if you're looking for that kind of a game, Tetrarchia will not disappoint. Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We'd ask you to please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. I'd ask you, ladies and gentlemen, to please check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about military history and books on military history and fun things like that. I'd really appreciate that as well. Please subscribe. And please give us a thumb on Board Game Geek to this video. That also helps us out a lot. You know, ladies and gentlemen, have you ever wondered why the Romans were always having trouble with their relationships? Well, their X was always a 10. Please somebody help me on my feet again. And I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band. And me, Count Dracula!
My fangs fell out when I said me.